You can see God in anything your reflections in. I can find God in anything I'm reflecting in. You can see God in anything your reflections in. I can find God in anything I'm reflecting in. You can see God in anything your reflections in. I can find God in anything I'm reflecting in. You can see God in anything your reflections in. I can find God in anything. Some people open up their eyes and see the world they know outside. I can close my eyes and see all that and way beyond. When these trials of life come heavy and these obstacles get hard, feeling like I need some answers, I just go and talk to God. I just go and talk to God when I'm looking for guidance. Need more insight, need vision, need direction when I'm blinded. Then I start that conversation with that voice I hear inside me. And the conversation starts with a voice inside that sounds just like me when I talk to God. See God in anything. When I talk to God. God in anything. When I talk to God. You can see God in anything. When I talk to God. Find God in anything. When I talk to God. See God in anything. Your reflections in. I can find God in anything I'm reflecting in. You can see God in anything your reflections in. I can find God in anything I'm reflecting in. My daddy said don't ever assume, ask questions. It's ironic it was that advice that helped this song happen. It was also that advice that led me to my life's blessings. That same advice helped me make it through life's lessons. It was that advice that separates grown-ups away from children. That advice can be the difference from knowing or just believing. It was that advice that brought the gavel down on my decision of breaking the mental chains of this man created religions. It's faith and belief, nonsense, the biggest scam ever. I hate to say it, I swear this one hell of a mental illness. We don't believe no other time. Why we do it with these religions? The fact that COVID's killing while all of these guys is missing. A lot of hide and seek and peek the fools. Guys playing games with you. I'ma just assume he ain't got no COVID miracles. Maybe he ran out after making the donkey talk, or them stories about a guy walking on water tides. This is simply a distraction to keep you away from you and to look outside for a God when the God is inside of you. When you close your eyes at night to pray to that voice you talking to, when you ready to face the truth, you realize that that voice is you. You can see God in anything your reflections in. I can find God in anything I'm reflecting in. You can see God in anything your reflections in. I can find God in anything I'm reflecting in. You can see God in anything your reflections in. I can find God in anything I'm reflecting in. You can see God in anything your reflections in. I can find God in anything I'm reflecting in.
Yo, what up, family? How y'all doing? Welcome back to another installment When the Pastor Has Questions. And yes, I'm excited because we have a guest with us, and I'm going to be bringing him in just a moment on this question, y'all. The question for the week that we are asking, even though this is going to only be the only show, just so y'all know, your boy is on spring break. We're going to do this show this week, and then we're going to pick back up on next week. And we are talking about, should you leave Christianity? We're putting it in the form of a question, and I got with me none other than Bruce, the captain from the YouTube channel Life After Religion. So let's bring Bruce in. Bruce, what's up, my man?
Cheers, my friend. Cheers.
What's up, man?
How you doing?
You got the jazz going, the funky jazz.
Doing good, man.
Man, let me see. Turn it down just a little bit so I can hear you.
Who, me?
You got it? Yeah. Where is that coming from? You got music?
Nah, I don't have any music going on.
I wonder where is that coming from.
Yeah, I don't hear music at all, man. Not on my end.
I wonder, is that coming on my end? Oh, you know what? There we go. It was something funny going on in my connection. Boy,
Wow.
Satan is busy, ain't he? Yeah, it was like this funky
Eli in the spirit. He hearing music.
What happened was the screen that I had on that it was playing the video.
Mm-hmm.
The video had stopped, but it had went to the next video and it was playing. It was coming through my headphones. Yeah. So what's up, man? How you doing?
Man, I'm doing well, bro. I'm fortunate. I can't complain. Long day, man. But yeah.
Well, it is Monday, and you know, this is some of that day to get back in the pocket, and then you know what? It was spring, so we had to spring forward with the time. So I know a
Man,
lot of people that probably hurt.
lost that hour.
Yeah, that probably hurt. Well, listen, man. The people have been seeing you in the chat. Been letting them know that you were going to be on, and I'm just happy to have you here. The show is always a good thing to have when guests are coming through, and we can have the conversations from some different perspective. A lot of us have the same story with some subtle differences, and I think that it helps for us to have these type of talks. So before I go too deep into the religion stuff, man, why can you just give the people a little bit of a brief history, what you've been doing for the last 20 years in your career, and who you are?
Certainly, my brother. So I'll start by I'm from South Carolina. I'm a Southern guy from a town called Marion, South Carolina, about 45 minutes northwest of Myrtle Beach. Pretty much that's where I was raised, and my mother's from South Carolina. My father's from Sierra Leone, West Africa. That are kind of playing a little later, and grew up there. Graduated from high school. My brother went to the Marine Corps, and we didn't have a lot of money, so I didn't see a lot of options. So one day in chemistry class, one of my best friends looked back and he said, "Man, we should join the Marines." And I was like, "Okay." Crazy decision, because when I got in boot camp, bro, I was like, "What in the world did I do?" Because the pain that those drill instructors was putting us through, but it ended up proving to be a good decision. At least I made good of it. That allowed me to see the world. Went to Okinawa, Japan for my first duty station. Came back. That's kind of when I got into Christianity, but I know we'll get into that. But fast forward, man, I ended up staying in the Marine Corps for 20 years, and I actually have been retired now for several years. And I did IT, like cybersecurity work, when I was in the Marines, and I transitioned out of that. What's up, Neil? I see Neil in the chat with Texas Goddess. And I'm still doing cybersecurity now as a consultant. So that's what's been happening, man, career-wise. If you go to my channel, that's why you'll see I call myself the captain. When I joined the Marines, I joined like at the lowest rank, man. I was a private enlisted, and after some time, I applied for an officer program, got accepted to that. They let me go to the University of Maryland while on active duty. So I did that, got a degree actually in writing, in English literature, because I had a technical background from my military job. And then I got commissioned as a lieutenant. And I finished out the rest of my time as an officer and retired as a captain a few years ago.
Awesome, man. That's awesome. So everybody, y'all listen up. We got this interview here with the captain, and hopefully y'all will be able to relate to some of the things. We just gonna chill and have this kind of a one-on-one, but y'all get your questions and stuff ready, so maybe we can ask the captain a little bit later. So when you got into religion, what denomination were you into?
Well, I didn't grow up my family wasn't a church going family, but we had religious overtones in our family, like most Black people where I'm from, and probably most Black people in general. But my mom was kind of like an Easter church mom. We get a couple of suits and go to church on Easter, maybe one other occasion, but even that stopped after a while. But I had a best friend in high school, one of my best friends, and his church was very, very religious. And we used to go there. So that was really my first exposure to a denomination. And I think that was a holiness church.
Mm-hmm.
And bruh, I mean, that church was, I don't know if you ever heard of the word to tarry at the altar, to wait
Yeah,
at
yeah.
the altar. Yeah, they used to tarry every Sunday, man, and it was an ugly sight. I mean, it was a it was a huge altar in front of the pulpit, and they would go, they would pray, and then they work that up into some shouting music. They're dancing and shouting, spits hanging from their mouth, all of that stuff.
Wow.
And as teenagers, we just used to watch. So it was kind of a real strict environment. And I'll land my plane here, but the particular thing about that denomination is it influenced how I ended up entering Christianity, because they had you couldn't wear earring. We used to cut designs in the back of our hair. They told us that was the mark of the beast. All these little rules. They even said that you weren't supposed to drink grape juice or something weird like that. So Holiness Church was my first exposure. But when I became a Christian, I was actually non-denominational.
Okay. So why did you believe this in the first place? And what I'm getting at is, I know for me, as many of us, you have a parent or somebody that's in it. So for you, seeing as how they weren't really that religious, for you, what got you over the fence and say, hey, this makes sense, I'm gonna go this route in religion? Why did it work for you, or why did it make sense to you?
I think I had 3 connection points. One, that church that I went to, it wasn't any church, right? It was like family for me, because that was one of my best friends. Like, in fact, he and I went to boot camp together. Like, that's how close we were in the Marines. So in fact, I call his mom and one of my other friends' mom my second and third moms, right? So they were like family. So I kind of had like that family relationship that made the leap easy. The second thing was, my mom always tells my brother and I this story about our great grandfather, which is her grandfather. He was a prophet. She would always tell us that. And we didn't make anything of that, but she always said that before he died when my grandmother was pregnant with her. And at that time, he prayed for her, right? And there's even a letter, like, my mom gave me she gave me the family tree. It goes all the way back to like 1812 down to South Carolina. And my great grandfather has listed his name as Prophet Hughes in the stuff in the family tree. His first name's not even in there. And a letter from him to his wife when he was dying, and he was like, he's praying for my grandmother. He's pregnant with the baby or whatever. So she always felt like his prayer reached us, long story short, right? So we kind of had that sentimental connection with him. And then my older brother, who I kind of followed a little bit, he got saved first. And so I kind of had those 3 connection points, and especially him, that made the leap real easy for me, like, to actually, yeah.
Well, I wanted to also let everybody know Bruce has a YouTube channel, and I'm gonna go ahead and post it again just now in the chat so people can check that out, and subscribe to that YouTube channel. And he has some shorts and some things that you should check out. Bruce, I was actually over there checking those out before we came on. I didn't say this in the backstage, but if we needed to, I was thinking we could go over there. But I want to get into this question a little about Christianity. Now we're going to get a little bit deeper on what is it? What is it, and is it good for anything? So I'm just out the box with that. Should we well, before we go into that question, is it good for the keeping? Should we hold on to this religion as melanated people or as any people? What do you think about it?
Okay. Before I answer that, you're welcome, Neo. I see she's saying thanks for the service. Chris, we got another Marine in the chat. Simplify, hoorah. Should we keep it? I mean, man, you hit me with a big question. up front. Man, I think I look at Christianity now as a vehicle, man, and it's a vehicle that we've been using for a long time, like as Black people. You know, I look at Christianity through the lens of Black American, because that's been my entire experience. Even though I've been to church probably everywhere, man, Okinawa, Japan, Thailand, Bahrain, anywhere the military sent me, I would find a church. But my immediate lens was always through like a Black church experience, non-denominational, but charismatic, right?
Okay.
But when you look at our tradition, it goes way back, man. The church is it's almost like we can't completely remove it, because it's such a huge part of our culture. It's a vehicle, and in a way, it's organized. The way it's organized can be helpful. Right now, I don't think it is, but it can be, because you have a captive audience every Sunday, and some churches several times a week, where you get to shape the thinking of Black people for the space of an hour to however long your service is. That's great, but I think it's being severely misused.
Well,
Yeah.
well, what about in the instance of some people bringing up things like civil rights and stuff like that? Um, some people would bring that up. I think we was talking about this on last week. That's brought up as a good thing. Yeah, some would say this is why you need Christianity. Look at what it did for melanated people when it came to Martin Luther King and him leading the civil rights movement. Um, that was probably the highlight of one of the great things that they could point out as far as Christianity. Because I'm getting to whether or not Christianity's good outweighs it's bad, and I wanted to get your take on that.
Yeah.
Is it better for us to keep it because for
Mhm.
all those other reasons?
I think that civil rights era was probably one of the few highlights where Christianity, like, it was really instrumental in mobilizing and serving like the Black community, like in a measurable way, like that we can look back and say we got something out of that. But if you rewind back to, like, I think the late 1800s, when the AME Church was first being founded. I'm being general on the date, but the African Methodist Episcopal Church,
Right.
back then, that church was really, it had a social focus more so than a theological focus. They were less pie in the sky and more social issues and doing stuff to address those challenges. I think that was great back then, but then that and the civil rights were two useful highlights for the church. But everything else, I feel like it was used to really kind of restrict us and make us more of a docile, subservient class of people in America.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. That's interesting because something I was thinking about that I didn't ask you backstage. Just let's throw this in there. Do you remember the cop that shot the young man? She thought it was her apartment. This happened in Texas.
Bolden John.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
we were talking about that a few weeks ago. That young man was actually a member of the Churches of Christ, the denomination that I keep telling people I was a part of. I'm familiar with the church he went to, but I didn't know him personally. So in that case, we saw something happen. Willie Cartwright brought it up when he was on the show
Mhm.
about how the judge even got up and gave the lady that was accused, gave her a Bible or something, and gave her a hug. The bailiff stroked her hair, and it was just all these different things going on. She was immediately forgiven, of course,
Mm.
by the brother in the courtroom, and crying and hugs going on with the person that basically killed your brother. Um, I want to get your info, your take on something like that. Is it Christianity, as you said, is Christianity to blame, or is that a good thing that they would forgive like that so quickly? How do you feel about it?
Um, I think it's a horrible thing that they would forgive so quickly. And yes, Christianity is definitely the blame for that, because it's the it's the culture around the black church that it has made it seem like we're such a resilient, forgiving people, that to the point where you're shot in cold blood and the first thing your family member wants to do is forgive. I think that's terrible, because that lends to the miscarriage of justice, right? You're contaminating the jury pool, the way I see it, because people look and say, wow, he's got compassion. And now you got the jury speaking on behalf of the deceased. Well, he would probably want us to go easy on her, right? The judge, he would
Wow.
probably want us to go easy on her. And I think the officer, she only got like 10 years or something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
It wasn't a heavy sentence, but I think that, um, in my opinion, I feel like they always find the person who's who's got like that whole forgiveness philosophy, and they put them out front, because that's the messaging that they want to that's how they want to lead for us as black people, right? So that, in my opinion, the offender can get a lighter sentence. So I just think that gets in the way of justice. Like, forgiveness is that's your personal thing between you and God. Like, keep that in your prayer closet. But outside, that's where we're trying to get justice. We
And
ain't worried about
see, people, I think where people press uh that decision, or that view, they press that view because it's like, isn't it a good thing? Isn't this the nice, this isn't this the right thing to do? Should you not forgive? You don't want to hold that hate in your heart. You get those kind of comments. And
Mhm.
how would you feel about somebody taking it that far? Because forgiveness is supposed to be the thing to do. It's good for your health.
That may be true. It may be good for your health, but that's your health. They ain't got nothing to do. You know what I mean? Like,
Hmm.
it's a personal issue, and I feel like the way they drag the forgiveness narrative out into the forefront is that's misplaced forgiveness, right?
Mm.
Again, that's something that's in your prayer closet between you and God. If you don't want to hold on to that and get bitter and all of that, you do that privately. But in public, and I would even tell Christians, those kind of situations are more Romans chapter 13. In Romans chapter 13, I think verse 4, it's talking about like, um the administrator of law. It says, he is a minister of God to you for good, but if you do that which is evil, be afraid, for he bears not the sword in vain. We need to be on that if we're gonna go biblical, right? She did bad. The judge got the power to execute or whatever, to punish, to deal with that. Let the judge do that. Get your forgiveness out the way. That's how I see it.
Let the judge do it.
Yeah.
So, all right, all right. And we may come back. Let me see if I can switch the gear here a little bit. With your experiences, with different Christians wanting you to just either leave them alone, because I like, you got a channel, you're talking about life after religion. Some
Yeah.
Christians can take offense to the things that you put up, and I know they definitely take offense to my shows because we just come at it. So, in your opinion, or how do you feel about people saying, hey, you should just move on, man? If you don't want to be a Christian, don't be a Christian. Going on about your life. and stop talking bad about Christianity? Or why are you trying to get people or to leave or give them information that's contrary? Why would you do that? Yeah. They don't want you doing that.
Yeah. I've heard that, and believe it or not, somebody's asking, is this Bruce from the chat? Yeah, it's me. How you doing, Mr. Blackfoot? So yeah, I actually heard that when I was in church. It was one of the sisters, and I don't know who she had talked to, and I could see the anguish on her face, man. She was like, if they don't like Christianity, they should just go on about their business, right? Like that was her disposition. Now that I'm one of those people, oh, Chief Kylie, what's up, man? So yeah, I think that people who say that they don't understand our position, look at my Bible. Let me show you something.
Right.
Look at this time I invested. You look at these pages. You see that? This all that studying I was doing. The Bible falling apart. That's years of time. You see that wear and tear. So when you tell people like us to just move on, I mean, it's a part of who we are now. And just like you believers still have the choice to do what you want with your Christianity, we have the choice to do what we want with ours, right? It just so happens that, we might have did a little research and now we're on the other side of it and we want to help people out. So that's how I see it, man. I mean, I'm definitely not stopping.
That's what's up, because we're gonna build into you coming out, but let's go back into you being a Christian, and like you clearly, you were studied, you were looking into. Can you give the people some idea how deep of a Christian you were before that? Because they'll surely say, "Oh, you didn't know what you was talking about. You didn't know what you was doing."
Yeah.
What were you doing in the church?
I got you. When I first came in, man, like I mentioned, I was exposed to Christianity through like a deep, I don't even know if this denomination exists like that, but it's a holiness church and you couldn't do nothing secular. Right. So when I finally went and got saved, that's where I went, because that was the only church that I really knew. And I was home on leave from Okinawa, Japan. So I went there. And nobody really called me, but it was just, hey, what's up, Pinky? Grace Pinckney. So when I was in Okinawa, Japan, I kind of got separated from like my boys that I used to run the street with, right? We got in a little bit of trouble, but when I went to Okinawa, Japan, it kind of pulled me away. I grew up a little bit, kind of started maturing in my thoughts. So after that year and some change in Japan, I came back home for 30 days leave. And I was just feeling different, man. It was like, I feel like it was something telling me to step it up. And I thought that was God telling me I needed to get saved. So I'll spare you some detail, but I end up calling one of the guys who used to always invite us to church, and we used to always pick on him. But I called him this time, like, hey man, I think it's time for me to get saved, right? So after avoiding him for a few days, I finally went to church just for the altar call. They made that altar call, man. I went up there crying and everything, gave my life to Christ, and I made the same kind of commitment that I had seen in that church, right? So the first thing I did, you remember them CDs back in the day? You used to have the CD book with all your CDs and your cover art. Threw them away.
Oh,
Jodeci and everything, man. Mobb Deep, because that was like the devil's music. So I was serious. And then from there, my next duty station was North Carolina. So, I mean, not North Carolina, but Southern California. And my brother, believe it or not, was already there, and he was saved. So when I got to the airport, my brother picked me up, and he had two other guys. We were all in our early 20s. and they pull up to the airport, man, bumping Kirk Franklin stomp, doom, 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 doom. And I was like, man, I can get with this. So that was like, you know, my early exposure to Christianity. But fast forward to answer your question. I got there, man, and I dedicated all my time to study and prayer. I was in Southern California and I wasn't even going out. Within, I'd say, a year and a half, I was teaching. Within 2 years, I was licensed. I became licensed as a minister. I'm still in my early 20s. Within 3 years, I had my own Bible study, Tuesday night Bible study for the church. The pastor used to, he would let me substitute preach for him sometimes. Like I was that dedicated. I did everything, man. I sang in the choir, praise and worship. I helped set up, attended church Bible studies, taught Bible studies, and I was there for about 4.5 years. And I kind of did that everywhere that I went. And I probably would have become a pastor if it wasn't the fact that the military was transitioning me to another location every 2 to 3 years. So yeah, that's kind of, yeah.
So you definitely weren't fly by night Christian. You were not the pew warmer Christian, just not even a regular lay Christian. You were somebody actually putting in the work, dedicating your time. I mean, you were doing the real deal stuff. So with that being said, and knowing that you had that kind of commitment, I do want to kind of dig a little bit into what got you to thinking in the other direction. Like, what was the moment when you started thinking, this might not be what I thought it was, and you started to look into things differently? When did that happen for you?
I left one thing I don't want to touch on, Eli.
Go ahead.
When I was a Christian, I actually wrote a book, right? I think this is even the first time I showed it to you.
Right. Yeah.
Right. It's called Appetite. And that's Bible scripture. These are the pages. This is the bread of life.
Oh, wow.
On that plate. Right. So when you say how deep I was in it, this is where I was with it. You know, and I published this book back, I think, in 2014, and it's a Christian-based book. It reflected my Christian worldview, and it was about scriptures that say, like, if you hunger and thirst for righteousness, you shall be fulfilled, or whatever. And then there's another scripture somewhere in the Proverbs that talks about when you sit before kings or people of authority, put a knife to your throat if you're a person who's given to appetite. So that's my brother in the chat. Hey, what's up, Tyrone?
Hey,
he left the church too. So this is the guy that was picking me up from the airport, Tyrone Dixon, when I first got saved, bumping that Kirk Franklin. But yeah, man, I wrote that book, and yeah, so that's kind of how deep it was.
That's what's up, man. Because like I said, a lot of people, they will question that, those especially Christians who don't know you, they find it hard to believe. So at what point did you, like, can you take us back, if you can remember, when you're gung-ho, you're ready to go, you're hard charging, but for Jesus, but then when did you start to say, wait a minute, something might not be right here? Like, I gotta look a little bit deeper. When did that happen for you?
Man, I don't even know if it was one moment, man. Like, I was active in church here in Northern Virginia, and I told this to you backstage, and I mentioned that, my dad, rest in peace, he passed in 2020, but he's from West Africa, Sierra Leone, and he's the only person on his side of my family that I know. I don't know anybody but him, and he didn't really teach me anything about where he's from. So that always put a little bookmark in my thinking, like, well, who were we before Christianity? Like, I was curious about African people and Black people all the time. And when I would go places, I used to tell my cousin, like, man, why is it everywhere that we go, it seems like our condition is like bad? And so that would kind of make me look in the Bible like, well, if this is God's book, then it should be something in here about who we are. Like, what were we doing before slavery and colonization? So every year or so, I would just look for something. And it was like not much. And what I did find seemed to be negative. And so I was just kind of curious about like my roots and identity in that regard. And the Bible didn't seem to be really giving me anything substantive. And then one day, fast forward, man, I think it was like 2015 or 16. I just retired from the military, and I think I was at work, and I saw a video by a guy, you guys, I'm sure you know him, Dr. Yosef Ben Yakinen, Dr. Ben. And I think he was debating like a Jewish scholar or somebody, and he was ripping this guy apart. He had evidence. He did primary research. He went to the places himself and did research. And he was a professor, I think, at Cornell University. So he got my attention because, one, he was answering the questions I had been asking, and he was teaching stuff about the Bible that I had never heard before. And he was defending it against people who were pushing what I thought was the truth. And I said, wow, I never seen a guy like this before teaching this kind of stuff with credible research. So I started buying his books, and I started watching all of his videos, and everybody who he referenced, I would buy books by them. So within the space of 2 years, man, my bookshelf went from Christian stuff to this stuff back here. And that's all like history, African history, Black history, African spirituality, ancient Egyptian stuff. And that's kind of how I fully stepped into like that research phase.
So if you had to pull out maybe something from Dr. Ben's research or during that time period where you were doing that study, what probably hit you in the gut hardest as a Christian when you started looking into some of that information? What for you made the light bulb go off?
I think, let me see if I can remember, man. I guess I can answer that this way. It was another guy who Dr. Ben put me on to. I can't remember his name, but all I knew was that the history I had learned was
Wouldn't
a
be
lot.
John Henry Clark, would it? Because
it might have been Dr. John Henry Clark, but whoever it was, they made me focus on that time period, like 300 years before, 300 years after, like the supposed birth of Christ. And I had to know. I said, because the history that I had been taught is not true, like about Black people and our contributions and all of that stuff and how Christianity came on the scene. And I said, but I got to know, did this Jesus guy exist? Because everything hinges on him. I had to know. And in the midst of studying that time period, about 300 years before and 300 years after the turn of the century, I learned that Moses did not write the Torah or the first 5 books of the Bible, right? And I don't know about y'all, but when I look at the Bible, that name on the book is supposed to be who wrote it for most of them, right? And in the first 5 books, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Deuteronomy, and all of that, those are Moses's books. From what we know, he went up on the top of the mountain and had this encounter with God, came back down with these scrolls, and that was the foundation of what we supposed to be reading. But I learned that Jewish rabbis and scholars actually wrote that stuff probably more than 600 years after Moses' time. So for me, that threw the entire alignment off, because At that point, you can no longer call this the word of God or inspired by God. So for me, that unhinged everything.
That sounds familiar to me. Like for me, it was when I found out that there were things that were either added into the Bible or taken out. That was major, because you can't, you know, if you're telling me this book is from the all-powerful deity, right? You're telling me that that's what this is their word. You cannot have a book that is tainted, because now you're going too far. I don't know what's real in here. I don't know what's not at that point. I mean, that seals the deal for me. That seals the deal. Yeah. I remember I tell everybody this story because I was talking about the Book of Enoch, you know, and how in Jude makes a quote, and you will find this quote in the beginning of Enoch. And I went through this whole spiel and explaining to the church how it wasn't that this book was lost, because they were just thinking, well, yeah, there's a couple of books the Bible talks about, those books are lost to history. I'm like, no, this book wasn't lost. And whomever put together the KJV, they knew about the book. They just decided we didn't need it. It was really that simple. And I tried to show that from the pulpit, and some people got upset. So that kind of brings me to this, when we were talking in the backstage about um, Christians when they hear these things. Sometimes, have you ever been in these conversations and maybe given what you thought was the clearest evidence that now this Christian should have something to chew on, something to go and research and look into, but perhaps it didn't go that way, or they still held on to it? Well, what is your take on why that happens, even though we're giving them good objective evidence?
Man, let me shout out my cousin in the chat, Fit for Life. He's a master fitness trainer. He visited in Florence, South Carolina. He and I were talking about the Book of Enoch recently. Just throw this in here. The church that we both attended up here in Northern Virginia, you know, it was I guess you can call it an African church, right? I don't know if you guys have been to like African churches, but it's a completely different kind of experience. But long story short, they used to bring across some deep stuff, like across the pulpit. And I'm like, man, how they getting this revelation from God? You know, like example, what's the guy in the Old Testament that he was a mighty warrior before the Lord? Nimrod. You remember Nimrod from Genesis? It's one verse about that guy, I think. It's one verse. The mighty Nimrod or something, maybe two.
Yeah.
He was a mighty warrior before the Lord. Doesn't say anything else about him.
Right.
These guys giving whole life stories on Nimrod. He was a black guy. He offended God, or he did something, and he was ruling, but then he messed it up. And I'm like, where are they getting all this revelation? We thinking they got some other kind of deep connection with God. They're talking about Abraham and how about his father Terah and how he was an idol worshiper. And I'm reading my Bible and I'm like, where are they getting? This is deep. How they? And then we come across like the Book of Enoch and the Book of Jasher, and you see that those books are going into more depth about some of these characters that you only get like surface level stuff in the Bible.
Right.
So they're cheating. You know, they're going to study these other books, and then they're bringing it across the pulpit like it's some kind of revelation, right? So I just thought that was funny, but I'm trying to find your original question.
No, well, you said something that made me want to go elsewhere, but I was getting that Christians, when we give them information like this on the Book of Enoch, it's like,
go ahead. You know, I think it's an emotional connection, because you're saying like they still hold on even if you give them counter evidence. Like if you can show
Right.
a Christian that the flood never happened, right? And
Yeah, that's a good one. That is, oh my goodness. Go
that was
ahead.
one of my things too, right? The flood, I mean, come on. This is not probably, is the most catastrophic event that has happened in the Bible, if you're not counting what they claim is going to happen in Revelation, right? The
Right.
entire world, 8 people left. I mean, so, you know, when you tell people stuff like this and they still hold on to the Bible, I think a part of it's fear, man. I was talking to one of my old Christian brothers. He works with me, and I was telling him about, he didn't know I had left Christianity at the time, but I was telling him my brother had, and how my brother's wife, she was a little bit on edge because he wasn't going to church. He had renounced Jesus and all of that, but he was the same guy. He loved his wife. He loved his children. He provided for his house. But in her head, she felt like something might happen because you left
Wow.
Jesus.
Wow.
So I was telling him that, and in the course of the conversation, he kept trying to point out that she might be right. And then when I gave him counterpoints, out of nowhere, this guy said, "You can't get me not to believe. And he hit the table. I choose to believe."
Wow.
And I'm like, whoa, big fella. We not trying to get you to walk away from your faith. But I felt like when he got confronted with counter evidence that he couldn't answer, it's almost like your world is coming apart, you know, and you just try to grab whatever you can to hold it together. So it's dismantling your whole worldview. That's a scary feeling. So I think that's one of the first reasons that people hold on to it.
Did you have any of that yourself though? Because I mean, I had an experience, but did you have that like hitting a brick wall experience? Like, oh my goodness, this is not real. This stuff ain't what I thought it was.
I went through those phases, man. But I was kind of going through it privately because, you know, my deconvert, all this studying and stuff from these books back here, it was like leading into COVID and during COVID. So I'm going through all this process. I'm angry. First, it's a little bit of denial. Like, wait a minute, was I the one who was blind? Because the scriptures talk about the light of the gospel coming in so that the blind can see. Are you telling me that I was the one who was blind all this time? So these thoughts are coming to me like all this time. I'm trying to help people see, and I'm the one who was blind, right? That was a big moment for me. And then it's like you go through an angry phase because you're kind of mad that you've been lied to, right? Or you believe the lie. Then there's a little bit of embarrassment, like, man, was I believing that? A donkey talking? You know, people building up a tower to the sky and God knocking it down. I mean, you know,
a snake talking,
right?
Water supporting somebody walking. Oh man, really?
I mean, man, I know my cousin who's in the chat. He told me that he felt like he was losing his mind when he was when the facts were landing. He felt like he was losing it at times because, you know, it's turning your world upside down, or should I say right side up.
Absolutely. I mean, it's the indoctrination of it that kind of leads me to when I was asking you about whether or not you think is traumatizing. All right, because you know, I think I hear people calling it that now more on YouTube and talking about it being some type of syndrome, and how that they were traumatized religiously and they were thinking about that, you know, the whole hell thing. Hell could be our example. Now you're telling me that there's this guy, you know, think about what you tell a child, you know,
Ooh.
but if you're bad, You're going to go to this place of eternal torment where you will never get out. You're gonna burn forever. That's an image for you already. Who wants to burn at all? And yeah, and so the reason I say that it could be traumatizing, Richard Dawkins, he had this show back of years ago, and he interviewed a friend of a guy who was real religious. This guy was real religious, and there was this doctor who was performing abortions, and he disagreed with that doctor. Well,
Mm-hmm.
long story short, the religious guy, he ends up catching the doctor up coming off of work one day, and he kills him. He shoots him, and he
Wow.
thinks he's doing, he's doing a good thing, thinks he's doing the right thing. And I'm thinking, religion in general, but I think it can happen with Christianity. And Christianity sometimes likes to say, oh, well, that's not us doing the suicide bombing, but it just did it in a different type of way, a different type of killing some years ago, and then they had the Crusades. It was just a different thing. So it has the potential, depending on how a person wants to interpret the book, it has the potential to put a person in a situation where you're willing to hurt somebody and feel good about it, feel like you did the right thing. So I think that all that can have some traumatizing effects as it relates to the indoctrination that some of us go up with. I wanted to get your thoughts on that, about whether or not religion can be traumatizing.
Mm. Man, I think for Black people, Christianity itself is a trauma-based spiritual system. When you think about how we got it in the first place, they weren't doing altar calls back in the 1800s.
Mm,
That's not how we were coming to Christ. It was a do or die situation, and then it was a safe space, not because God was protecting you, but because it made you appear safe to the oppressor. So it was traumatic Christianity was birthed for us in traumatic circumstances. And I believe that that's why you got two churches now. It's not one church. You've got Black church, and then you've got white church or non-Black church. And the philosophies that come out of our church were based on the traumatic experiences we had over the centuries and decades and stuff. But if you bring it current, I think some of those philosophies are still, it's got the potential to be traumatic, like police brutality. We talked about it earlier with Bolden John's brother forgiving the killer, like in court. You haven't even healed yet,
mm-hmm.
and you already talking about forgiving. So you're suppressing your own grief, trying to somehow reach out for Jesus. You're not even giving yourself an opportunity to grieve. So some of these things, we're trying to carry the weight of this good news, and it's not even allowing us to be human. You see what I'm saying? So we're even practicing spirituality from a traumatic place in general because of how we inherited the religion to begin with.
Absolutely. These um these belief systems can put you in a situation where you might have to change your worldview, and you can totally flip out. So some people end up going to the next thing, and so that was a question too that I get, having left Christianity. So what are you going to hold on to now? Where are you now? What is it that you're believing, and what are you going to put in place of Christianity? So before I jump over, some other things, I may jump back around, but let's go on to that. So what are you into now, or how do you answer that question when people want to know, yeah, what's your belief system at this current time?
I believe in me, man. Uh, I think that I have gotten that question, but for me, believe it or not, I have not had a lot of encounters with people who knew me as Minister Bruce, like just a few years ago. Like I've only seen a few of them. Like I see them online, but so it's a slow, kind of reconciling that old world with my new world is kind of slowly happening. But for the couple of people who have asked me, one, I tell them I'm not atheist, right? Like I still believe in the creator. I just don't believe in the God of the Bible. Or, I don't accept the Bible as authority in my life, and nor do I need to be saved, right? That's my thing. But I think you got to choose you. You chose Jesus. You made all these if you were serious about your faith, you made all these sacrifices. Romans 12:1. What's it say? Like, give your life a living sacrifice, give your body or whatever a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable, which is your reasonable service. That's the least you can do, is give your entire life to this thing, and maybe you'll get blessed on the other side. So, we've chosen Jesus. I think the first thing you do when you leave religion is choose yourself, because you have not been yourself. I was not myself when I was a Christian. Half of you, the sinful side of you busy trying to pray away, right? Because you're trying to be like Jesus. So you got to take time to embrace who you fully are first. So that's the first thing I did. But I did ask myself the question, Eli, and I'll land my plane here. If I were to define like a spiritual system or whatever for myself, what would it be? So I kind of define my own thing, and I call it like the 7 spiritual pillars. And it's just some things that I have that I think it may work for other people, but I think if I'm active in all of these 7 areas, I feel like I'll be spiritually grounded, healthy, productive in general. And so that's kind of what I'm on now.
Okay. All right. I won't press you for them unless you don't mind sharing, because I wanted to go into your experience in moving around, because what I noticed was when giving out information that was contrary to Christianity, it seemed to be kind of received, or at least listened to, by those who were well traveled. Now, people that hadn't gone anywhere and like just stuck around the South, but if they had been to like another country, like somewhere, I don't know, back in Water somewhere, and saw how they lived, or had been to the Aboriginal area of Australia, or even just seeing some different things, different religions at period, that there were other people in the world that had different belief systems. Because it's like, living in America is like, people forget there are other people in this world that don't know anything about what it is you believing in. They don't know. Never heard of Jesus before in their life. Have you had that experience with people as far as receiving and them being well traveled?
Yeah, I think you're right, man, because your identity is tied to where you live, and if you don't go anywhere, you think that's what the world is. So somebody giving you some counterpoints or telling you that something about your religion is not true, that's hard to receive. But I agree, when you move around and you see that there are people who have entirely different schools of thought, I think that opens you up, because you begin to evolve yourself when you go places. You begin to open up aspects of your identity based on where you travel, what you see, what you learn. You begin to start to pull in other elements into your identity. And I shared this study with you earlier, and it was a study by the University of Southern California that talked about why people shut down when their political beliefs are challenged. And it
Right.
said that the study observed that political beliefs are so deeply entrenched in people's mind that people often defend those beliefs even in the face of overwhelming counter evidence. And it said it further notes that challenging someone's political beliefs activates brain areas that are involved in personal identity and emotional response to threat. So again, I talked about that guy at work, and I'm giving counterpoints to his belief system, and he hits the table. I choose to believe. He felt like he was under threat, right? Like, because that's tied to his identity. And I feel like if you don't evolve and move around and give your chance to yourself a chance to expand your identity, when somebody introduces something new, man, I mean, it's going to shake your world. It's going to be a traumatic disruption for you. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, man. It's so hard to talk to, especially people in your family. But like you say, you didn't have the religion. Like my grandmother, who got me into the Churches of Christ, and from what I understand, it's people in my family just think I'm crazy now, bro. And when I say, I don't think that they mean that in a funny type of way either. They're not joking. They really think that I'm crazy because I don't believe the stuff that they believe. Like I don't lost it. I'm not me anymore. You're not who they know anymore. So it's not just that I'm trying to give the information that allows them to see the world differently. It's like now they see me differently. I'm no longer that guy anymore. I'm totally
Right.
different person, which is it's sad, but this is really what we come into. So in your estimation, Bruce, we come out of the South, black folk here in America, melanated, whatever you want to say. But the thing is, it's being religious is a thing. Is a thing. So what I want to get at now is how is it for you sharing your lack of faith with new people? Like when you meet newer people, they probably going to be religious. How does that work for you? Have you had that experience?
Um, I'm still moving into that territory, right? Because, but so far, it depends on who you meet. Some people are already on that frequency. You know what I mean? Some people are already open to other things other than Christianity, or they might consider themselves spiritual, or they just
Mm,
know, or they just believe already for whatever reason that there's some BS going on with Christianity, although they may not go as deep as you and I. But for people who still kind of have like the Jesus biblical traditional mindset, it's very explanatory for them, because it's like, are you an atheist? No, I'm not an atheist, but you don't believe in Jesus, right? So you kind of walking them through that. Yeah, I believe in the creator, right? Like when I look outside and I see the sun, the moon, and the stars, I know that didn't come from anywhere. So there's a creator. I just don't think that we have to relate to that creator how the Bible tells us to. So I kind of take that approach for people who are still in that mind frame.
I want to go back to the is Christianity uh, good to keep type of thing. And I want to do this by going back to the moral question, and it kind of goes something like this. I've heard this from Christians before. They'll say, "Well, you have to have some type of belief in a God because otherwise, where is your objective view of morality coming from? How do you know what's good, what's bad, what's right, what's wrong?" if you don't subscribe to this God or this belief system, Christianity. So what would you tell them when they come at you in that regard and say you can't know what's morally objective if you don't have a belief in this deity?
Mm. Man, after I got done laughing at them, what I would say is, because I think that's the funniest thing ever, that, but I get it. Christians feel like Christianity has a monopoly on morality, right? That if the Bible wasn't in place and that Christianity wasn't in place, the world would be a cesspool. You know, we'd be running out here, running rampant in sin. But at the end of the day, man, people, we inherently know what's good and what's not good. If for no other reason, we know how we would like to be treated, right? So we've already got a moral code embedded in our conscience, for one. So I don't think we need Christianity as a moral guide. In fact, I feel like it's kind of arrogant to assume that, but I understand why people do. Um, but I think Christianity is more useful, again, like for its potential to organize and maybe do community-based stuff that's beneficial for the community. Um, but that's a whole nother story as far as how you mobilize and what your objectives are and what you're really trying to accomplish, like to do real work. I just feel like the vehicle is in place to do some good practical stuff. But as far as a like a moral code, we don't need it. There's some things in there that we could use, but if we lost it today and couldn't find it tomorrow, I think we'd be all right.
Well, they could probably say, well, look, I'm looking at you say, or they're hearing you say, hey, we were born with some of these things when it comes to what's good and what's right. They would attribute that to Yahweh. Yahweh gave you that. That's why it's in. That's why you feel good, bad, and you can make these judgments because he put it there.
Right.
And what is your response?
I think if I were to tell that person, nah, Allah gave me that, how would you dispute it? I mean, there's no way. I see your Texas got us. There's no way to prove that. And I would say now, any religious text, the God of that text takes credit for creation. That's how they establish their credibility. They say, oh no, I did all of that. When you go outside and you look at all that, that's me. Yahweh saying that, Allah saying that. I don't know who else. Krishna, maybe Ra or Ptah back with the ancient Egyptians. All of them are claiming credit for creation, the creation of man and this moral system. That's how you establish credibility for your religious belief system. But I'd also tell them that moral codes were in place way before the Bible was even a thought in anybody's brain. You could go back to ancient Egypt. There was a book of Proverbs thousands of years before Solomon's Proverbs. Even the 42 negative confessions in ancient Egypt that were already being taught when Moses allegedly was educated there and went and got his stuff from the top of the mountain. So these kind of moral principles were pre-existent to Christianity. It's just that we were born into an environment where Christianity was the norm for your moral compass. And that's why we feel that way about it.
I mean, people get really, really hurt, bro, when you say something about Christianity, like we was talking about earlier. I mean, it's fighting words, bro.
That's
It's
true.
fighting words. Like you cannot say anything bad about Jesus. Like I felt the cringe when you were saying, when you were looking at the history. Yeah, I'm going back to the Jesus thing. I felt the cringe, man, because that time period and the way you said it, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna have to revisit that because people gonna want to know. So do you say Jesus existed, or he didn't. They gonna want to know. And you know, I can tell you where I'm at. You know, I'll roll with you, but they probably want to know where you at.
Where I'm at, did Jesus exist? That's a central
Yeah, what
question,
did you find? What did you find? Since you were looking, what did you find?
man. Listen, I had to know the answer to that question. I'm an answer, because if you study the Bible, you know, it's that death, burial, and resurrection, man. I mean, this whole religion hinges on that. You know, Adam and Eve supposedly introduced sin into the world. Now we stuck with that nature. We in under danger of hellfire, and then boom, here comes this guy. You know, he lives 33 years. He does a bunch of radical stuff. His daddy kills him on the cross, but he rose on the third day. And then he floats up into heaven on the cloud in the sight of 500 people, which interestingly enough wasn't documented by anybody. I mean, I don't know about you, but if I saw somebody float up on the cloud into the sky, man, I'd be drawing pictures, writing, doing YouTube videos. But, you know, nobody wrote about that. But did Jesus exist? I don't think he did. And the reason I don't think he did is because I studied that 600-year period, 300 years BC leading into 300 years AD. And I read a book called The Historical Origins of Christianity. I forget the author, but I got it behind me somewhere.
Henry Williams.
Yeah, Walter Williams, I think.
Walter Williams. Why I call him Henry again? I called him Henry last time.
Yeah. But he wrote a book called The Historical Origins of Christianity, and he takes you through that time period when Alexander the Great came in and conquered Egypt around 330 BC. He left his generals, the Ptolemies, there, and they infiltrated the Egyptians' spiritual system, and they forced them at sword point to create a new deity. They combined two Egyptian deities. I think it was Osiris and Apis.
The Apis bull.
And Osiris, and they call it Serapis, right? And that Serapis took on the imagery that would be similar to a Zeus or a Jesus, right? Same phenotype, same imagery, same temple, right? Where they worship. So I studied that history, and the bold claim that Walter Williams makes in that book is that at the Nicene Council in Rome in 325 AD, Emperor Constantine commissioned for Serapis to be converted into Jesus. I read that whole book, and I felt like that was still kind of a bold jump, so I had to do some more research. And I feel like I was able to put enough pieces together to confirm that that's probably true. And even if it's not, there's not enough evidence that Jesus lived. And I give you one more thing, Eli.
Mm-hmm.
In Alexandria, Egypt, they built a huge temple, and it was eventually dedicated to Serapis, who we discussed. They had, I don't know if you looked this up or not, but they had a huge stick in the temple called a Nilometer. You can Google this, like the Nile River meter, Nilometer. And they would take that stick, it was like a measuring stick, and they would put it in the Nile River to measure the water level. And if it was low, that would mean that in harvest season there would be drought. If it was high, that would mean in harvest season it would be flooded and no crops. If it was on level, they would give praise to Serapis, because that meant he was going to bless them in the harvest season. Okay, after the introduction of Jesus and all the Christians went and kicked out these pagans, that same temple, that same Nilometer, when they took it to the Nile River to measure the water, when the water was on level, they no longer praised Serapis. They started praising Jesus. So to me, I'm saying, yeah, they tried to conceal this transition between an old Egyptian Greek deity and Jesus, but it's still facts that's slipping through the cracks that's showing you that this was a political move to rebrand the ancient Egyptian deities into Roman deities, so that the influence that Egypt enjoyed over the region could now be branded and controlled by Rome. It was a political move. You know, you couldn't still have ancient Egyptian deities running around. You had to rebrand that stuff and take control.
That sounds interesting. Sounds pretty familiar. I mean, when you go into any particular people's belief system, I mean, you think about how powerful that is, belief is in general. I remember when I was in the army, one of the things I often thought about, and I'm being careful what I say. One of the things I often thought about was how are we going to fight this? This is a belief system. You can't really get rid of that in the sense of killing enough people to get rid of it. You have to kind of enlighten people,
Right.
because killing people, it just kind of feeds into what they already saying. So I think that's something we got to look at as we try to help believers by getting them information. But hey man, this thing right here can sound like a whole attack on your whole life, on everything. I'm trying to see, there have been some questions here, and I don't know if you wanted to, but I'm gonna put this back up on the screen about some of those points for life, because hey man, they might definitely help somebody. I know you and I went over them.
Yeah, sure. I don't mind sharing that. Let me see. Now, I did tell you, and I know you said, I could choose whether or not I wanted to share this or not, but I am working on a book right now called Life After Religion. And it's inspired by what I'm about to share with you, because again, as I was transitioning out of Christianity, which is a process, you're coming out of a relationship, essentially. At some point, I did ask myself, if I were following something, what would it be? Because I knew I didn't want to follow any other religion. So I came up with these 7 spiritual pillars that I thought, if you're active, if you remain active in these 7 areas, it'll keep you grounded, healthy, productive, etc. So these areas that I've identified are: first, roots, which is your self identity, your family, and your ancestry. Number 2 is history, which is your story and your traditions, not necessarily what you were taught in school, but the history that's connected to your ancestry, your bloodlines, the events, stories, good and bad, that kind of brought you here. So roots and history. Third is culture, which is the practices, the norms, and the things you do that make your life what it is. Next is your beliefs. And your beliefs are like the mythos. You can pull that from the Bible. You can go to, you can identify your ancient African-American people or your ancient African people and pull traditions from there. But it's the stories that make up your mythos. For a lot of us right now, those are the Bible stories. And you can still use those if you choose to, but you don't necessarily have to be locked into Bible doctrine. Next is vision. I think this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is the 5th one, is vision. Vision is, let me see how I got here. It says, vision is your personal ability to picture an ideal for the future and progressively bring about its realization. So it's kind of like you identifying what you want to do in the world. Like you say that truth is your only religion. and that's your contribution to the world. Like that's a vision, but it's not just for what you want to do in the world. It's it's envisioning an ideal for yourself. Who do I want to be? How do I see myself at my personal best? Then you envision your best scenario. What's my scenario? Do I want a family? You know, where do I want to be situated? How do I want to be situated? And then finally, your vision for some aspect in the world at large, right? Like if you work on those things and walk toward those things, that's the vision part. The sixth one is balance. And balance is probably what you did in religion, prayer, meditation. You know, that's just you pulling yourself away from the hustle and bustle of the world and recentering yourself, whether you're listening or you're speaking, right? So that's balance. And then last is gratefulness or gratitude, which is your own awareness of your fortune, your blessedness, and your advantage. And the thing I say that makes gratefulness different than you may look at it is it's not only being thankful for your fortune, but it's recognizing that and using it to your advantage to do something with it, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, in the animal kingdom, giraffes just don't flex about having a long neck. They actually use it to reach. Cheetahs don't run 85 miles an hour for no reason. They use it to do something. And I think we all have some kind of an advantage, whether it's a natural gift ability or the situation that we're in. And, you know, every day we should think of how we should use that to advance ourselves or advance some cause. And I think that's like gratefulness. So that's pillar number 7. So real quick, roots, history, culture, beliefs, vision, balance, and gratefulness. Those are my 7 spiritual pillars.
That's what's up. Are you gonna put these in the new book that's gonna be coming out?
Yeah, I'm gonna put them in the new book because that's kind of how I started writing. I didn't intend for it to be a book. I was working on a different book, and when I shared those with one of my friends who's just like us, you know, she left. She was real deep. She left Christianity, and she said, well, "Why aren't you writing that? That would write itself." And I said, "Oh, you know, she's got a good point." So I kind of put that at the center of my focus, and then I developed a lot of content around that leading into life after Christianity. So we'll talk a little bit about what Christianity is, what the tradition has been to Black people, how it's helped or harmed us, etc. And then moving into life of Christianity and kind of giving us a little bit of a roadmap or some options as far as how you can lead your life. If you're still a spiritual person and you would like some kind of structure, I want to try and provide some options for that for people who are life after religion now.
Well, going back to should they leave or not? Some people, like we were talking earlier, have this need, Bruce. They need to be around people. They
Mm-hmm.
need to have the sense of a group that they can call their own, to do things with, to go out with, like a social club. And I think that some people, they're afraid to leave the religion because we live in the information age, right? We got all this information. You can find these things out. Some people do know these things, but they will choose to stay.
That's right.
And I'll give you this. I'll just pile it on so you'll have even more to talk about. I had some Christian friends in the Churches of Christ. One of them told me that they see what I'm saying. They believed it just like I did, but they also said 80%, they had their own business, and like 80% of their business was from the church. You know, it's so bad that the way people would, because I was getting to be a little bit known in the church. If people knew that they were associated with me,
I got you.
it would have been bad for their business.
Bad for
That type.
business.
Yeah. So what do you say to folk that, you know, you feel like you gotta just, you ain't got nowhere else to go, might as well keep going to church, you know? And then you got those situations where yeah, it'd be bad for business or bad for me at work if I didn't keep up this Christian front thing.
Mm-hmm. I would tell those people, do you? If it's, I mean, church people are still people. That they're still customers. So if it helps your customer base to maintain some kind of connection with the church, then you should do that. You know your truth. You know who you are. You have a lot of people who go to church right now, and they're not really in it. I mean, it's just the social club for them. That's all it is. After church, they're doing everything everybody else in the quote unquote world is doing. Right. So do that. I would still, if I had like a business, some clientele that was largely church based, I would find a way to maintain that relationship. But it doesn't mean I have to maintain the belief system. I can still respect, that belief system. I can participate even to a degree. I wouldn't want to lead, but I could participate to a degree and maintain those belief systems. But if without maintaining that as a belief system, but if you don't have a business tie like this person to the church, and you still feel like I don't have anywhere to go, I would tell you to walk out on faith. Take a step, because I think you need a little bit of distance if you're leaving the church. Like if you're unsubscribing, you need a little bit of space so that you can embrace yourself. Allow your own interests to come to the forefront, because chances are you might begin to build a community around some of the interests you have that have been lying dormant, or you hadn't had time to go and entertain. Right. So I think sometimes it just takes time, and you'll begin to build a community, even like some of the people in the chat, Neo, Texas Goddess, Chief Collie. These are people that I consider are now coming into my circle, that I'm joining in a new community of people who are on the same wavelength that I am, life after religion. And I think that's just a natural process. You just got to put yourself out there and allow that community, to build itself.
Man, absolutely, Bruce. And going forward, I want to tell people again about your YouTube. Let them know what type of things you talk about. I'm gonna try to copy and paste it again in the chat while you tell them about a little bit about that.
Yeah, I am still trying to be more consistent, but I do similar content to Eli. I do a lot of I throw a lot of questions out there in shorts, just kind of thought-provoking questions about Christianity, like does prayer work? I put it, what I thought was an interesting question out recently about, I don't know if you guys heard about the Christ the Redeemer statue in Brazil in early February got hit by lightning in the head.
We're gonna do this. We're gonna change it up. I'm gonna actually go to your
that video has got horrible quality, so
well, we'll mess around with it. Let's see what
you can pull up the article. If you Google it, there's an article out there about it. Yeah, is Jesus being judged?
Okay, y'all. Let's see. Let's check this out. Let's mess around with this a little
bit. Y'all gotta forgive.
Hey, what's happening, folks? It's the Captain. Check it out. I was on Instagram, and Will Smith had a post that came across my feed, and it was this. It was what you see on my screen right now. Lightning strikes Brazil's Christ the Redeemer statue, and netizens stunned. I just learned that word, netizens. It's apparently citizens of the internet. Nonetheless,
Bruce, if you want me to stop, just tell me you want me to stop at a certain place or anything.
All right. Okay, at a certain place, I got you.
We just having fun now, family. I'm waiting on any questions or anything like that, but we're gonna learn more about our guest tonight.
I had to look into this, and it is true. There are plenty of articles out there on that if you want to Google it and see for yourself, but it's said to have happened around February 10th, just a few days ago, and someone just happened to get that shot. I want to talk about what this means. But let's get into the article. So what I did, you can see the article twice up here on the left side. I just kind of cut and paste so all of those advertisements and stuff wouldn't break up the content. So I'm just kind of leave this over here and go to the left. So look at the first statement from the writer here. They invoke the word God. It says the photos of the lightning appeared nonetheless than a godly scene. It gave an impression as if the God is showing some supernatural power. I think that we all get that impression if we're honest with ourselves, whether you believe or not, and especially if you believe or used to believe. I think somewhere inside you feel like there's a statement in here somewhere with this event. And that's what I'm talking about, what that statement might be. It goes on to say, some events in nature when captured on camera can leave a person speechless and astonished. And one such incident, stunning images were captured when lightning recently hit the Christ the Redeemer statue. And you can see I highlighted some things here that I want to point out. Again, the incident happened a couple of days ago on February 10th. It said it gave an impression as if God is showing supernatural power. And I want to pull out this part because it says the phenomenon is normal in this place over in Brazil. But what makes it significant is that someone was able to capture it on camera. Now, what might this mean? I think if there were any other major architecture or edifice that was associated with a different religion, and it would have been struck by lightning, I think the church or the Christian community would have looked at that as judgment from God. But
Let's
now
talk about that.
Yeah, you know what? I was gonna pause it right there. I think you do get that type of bias over and over and over again. What? Expound on that.
We know. Listen, everything. I came up in Christianity as a scripture quoter, man, but I don't think God should be an experience, right? Like some things happen and it just gives you the impression that God is involved. This is one of those things. The Christ the Redeemer statue is the largest representation of Jesus Christ in the entire world. That thing stands 2,000 feet above sea level with outstretched arms, okay? The mere height and size of that is a good reason why it's a target for lightning. But the fact that someone caught it on camera is what makes this unique.
Mm-hmm.
That's not normal, capturing this on camera. And this is not, it was struck by lightning. I covered this later in the video, 9 years ago, back in 2014. But it was struck in the hand at that point. And I think the thumb was damaged then. Now, 9 years later, it's struck in the head. I just think that I can't think of another religious monument, but if it would have been any other religious monument, Islamic, Buddhist, whatever, and we would have got a news article like this, the Christian community would have been like this.
Yep.
The Birdman hand rub.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
They would have been telling us, God got you.
What's happening to a major Christian symbol? Not just any major Christian symbol, but the largest of its kind on the face of the earth. The Christ the Redeemer statue took about 10 years to construct, from 1921, and I think they finished it around 1931. So it's been in progress and almost in existence for a full century now. And now it's hit by lightning, not just anywhere, but in the head. Now here's something I'm gonna put on your mental. It was struck by lightning before, but it was hit in the thumb. But this was in 2014, right? Why is that significant? There are 9 years difference between 2014 and this year, 2023. Where is he going? If you understand numbers, numbers are a language. Numbers communicate a definite meaning or energy. The number 9 in particular indicates finality. Some people may say judgment or conclusion, because if you think about the numerical system, 9 is your final unique number. After the number 9, every other number is a combination of the previous 10 numbers, 0 through 9. You follow me? So 9 is your final or your conclusion of your real numbers. So I look at that. What is God or the universe telling us with this event done on such a massive scale to such an iconic piece? It's saying what I've been saying for the last few months. I believe that Christianity and the church as we know it is ending, right? 9 years later, it struck again. First time in the thumb.
Let me give you a preach, preacher, preach. Because you putting all kind of little things together. This is how they do it. Hold on.
Second time in the head. I believe that natural event is just is just congruent with social events. Social events, socially or spiritually, the church or Christianity has also been struck by lightning. But the lightning, socially and spiritually, is knowledge, facts. It's breaking up the doctrine that's had a hold on us for so long, a hold on the world for so long. Now nature's echoing the sentiments. So look, I'm not saying the church is going to end tomorrow, Christianity is going to end tomorrow, but what I am saying, folks, we're in the end game now. Think about that.
Hold on, bro. Yeah. So I don't know if you was done or not, but
that's good.
Wow. That I see you. You pulled it together, and this is what the era where they're actually reporting a loss. The Christian stats are going down. So hey man, maybe you found the point of the prophecy.
Hey, listen, that's my observation. We all had the same thought, and isn't it interesting that this is an act of God, right? Insurance would call that an act of God, right?
Right.
Your car gets struck by lightning and you make an insurance claim, they will put that under an act of God. So this is an act of God. This is induced by nature. And so the message, without anybody saying anything, is that God is involved. We all thinking that because of the magnitude of it. So I'm just saying, if we're going to think about it, let's think about it, because I think it is congruent with what we see happening. Even your show right here, man. I mean, we are bringing together facts that are challenging the doctrine that has had a hold on us for decades and centuries. And we're finally dismantling that, and I brought that together because it was struck in the head. And that's where the doctrine has control in your thinking.
Right. And that's even the prophecy, right? In Genesis 3:15, he's going to strike the head, bruise the head of the serpent.
That's right.
So I thought about that when you kept stressing the head in the video. I was like, it's at the head.
And I say even the thumb, in 2014, when y'all might think it's a leap, but in 2014, when it was hit, when you grabbing something, what's that primary gripping hand?
Yeah, you need that thumb to be able to do it.
You ain't gripping much without that thumb. So, when I look at it, I tell my cousin, I call like from about 2010 to 2020 and on the woke era, right? And, when all this information has kind of flooded the scene and we're like, wow, we didn't know this about history. We didn't know this about Christianity and the origins of it and stuff like that. It's interesting that this happened during that woke era where the church is kind of under scrutiny of all these facts that have been brought to the surface now.
Absolutely, man. These are not new facts, but this information that's floating around now in such a way that our kids and everybody kind of just has the access. I think that is definitely causing things to change, and we are seeing it. So I'm thinking that there is let me see, you can study the Bible and you can study Christianity. I think it does make a difference in understanding how our world was shaped. at least here in the Western area. I think that does some good, understanding that. However, I think that we have to have this conversation, and we have to start talking about where religion is and how it influences our politicians. And that then in turn influences those of us who maybe you don't want to be under certain religious rules, but depending on who's in power, that's going to be a thing. And that's a big thing that you see people like Richard Dawkins, a lot of militant atheists pushing for, because they don't want these type of things pushed into the school system and pushed into, I mean, think about it. Here in America, who's going to get elected if they come out as an atheist?
Oh, tell me about it.
You're going to have a hard time getting elected to office, and not even atheists, but just saying you left Christianity. If you were, you could say, well, I'm not. You could say, well, I'm not an atheist, but I don't believe in Christianity. It's gonna be hard to get elected in America, saying that.
I agree. It's definitely, and it's a way to ostracize yourself for sure if you want to move in certain spaces. So, I mean, I think it's definitely it's a bold decision, depending on what you got planned for yourself afterwards. So, yeah, I agree.
What about relationships, man? Before I let you go, have you had good, positive, bad experience when it came to your awakening and moving away from religion? And how did that affect your dating life or what have you?
Man, the dating life, I've been good. I know you didn't ask this, but I was married. I'm not any longer. So I'm kind of back out here in these on the market or in these streets, however you want to say it. But that's been okay, man. I mean, because you can make your own choices. You can gravitate toward people who have a similar mindset. But the relationships that I'm most anticipating to see how they go are my old church folks, because unlike you, I think you said maybe you're still kind of in that area and you still see people who you used to church with.
I actually just talked to my assistant minister a few hours ago.
Yeah. See, I hadn't crossed that threshold yet. I've run into people here and there. Couple of guys, we used to play ball together, so we kind of had a relationship outside the church. But other than that, I might have seen somebody like in the grocery store or at the gym. But it's a lot of people who I haven't really. I'm not sure if they know yet or not about my deconversion. But when they find out, they're gonna be like really shocked. So I will, trust me, I will keep you informed on how those conversations go.
Well, I definitely want to have you back on, and you always welcome to this show, so we can continue to grow. And y'all, his link is in the chat. Y'all go over there to the channel Life After Religion, and y'all go ahead and check out the captain. Subscribe. He and I both are trying to grow, so y'all already know what to do. Go ahead and subscribe. It is not that hard. And hit the like button on the video. We are out here in these YouTube streets trying to drop this knowledge and get it on y'all.
Yes, sir.
So we're gonna keep on going, man. I got some shows coming up and some more plans. Bruce, you know what we was talking about earlier, man. That group I got you in, y'all going in. I'm gonna have to see. It's probably about 2 or 3 shows in there right now. I gotta see.
We gotta invite some more people to that group. I mean, if you're in the chat now, you all right over there, Eli? All right. I thought I was gonna have to pray for you, man. I'm
trying to talk and drink. My bad.
Let me quote some scripture. But for folks in the chat while Eli's get situated, if they're not in the forum, I mean, you got to put them in there. I mean, some of those conversations, they're interesting, they're serious, they're hilarious. I mean, anything you can think of it's in there. I was laughing. I was belly laughing at some of those comments. I see you, Neo. I'm with that.
So that's what's up. Hey, to the family, y'all just continue to tune in. This will be our last installment just for this week, but then we're gonna be coming back, and I'm gonna get back on it and just keep putting these shows out. And y'all need to go over there and subscribe. Bruce got a book coming out. I know he's telling us about it early, but y'all keep your ears to the ground for that, because we want to announce that's coming out, or when it's coming out, so that y'all will be ready for that.
Appreciate
Any
you.
last words though, Captain, and then we're gonna get out of here for the night.
Man, listen, Eli. In the Old Testament, I'm gonna keep this short, but we used to preach the good news, because in the Old Testament we were under the law of sin and death, right? Then the New Testament came, and we were under the law of the Spirit, of liberty. But now there's better news. You can be free from all of that. You can be free from religion in general. And I think that as much as Christians like to tell people like me, you, Neo, Chief Kali, and others, Texas Goddess, to leave Christianity alone, we ain't going nowhere. I think it's only going to get more amplified, more defined, more interesting. So I think people need to get used to it, man. Join the conversation. You know, we look forward to discussing things with you.
Facts. And with that being said, truth is my only religion. Y'all stay locked in, and we are going to see y'all on next week. But check out the Chief.
See God in anything your reflections in. I can find God in anything I'm reflecting in. You can see God in anything your reflections in. I can find God in anything I'm reflecting in. You can see God in anything your reflections in. I can find God in anything I'm reflecting in. You can see God in anything your reflections in. I can find God in anything
Some
I'm
people
reflecting
open up their eyes
in.
and see the world they know outside. I can close my eyes and see all that and way beyond. When these trials of life come heavy and these obstacles get hard, feeling like I need some answers, I just go and talk to God. I just go and talk to God when I'm looking for guidance. Need more insight, need vision, need direction when I'm blinded. Then I start that conversation with that voice I hear inside me. And the conversation starts with a voice inside that sounds just like me when I talk to God.
See God in anything
When I talk to God.
find God in anything.
When I talk to God.
You can see God in anything.
When I talk to
I
God.
can find God in anything.
When I talk to God.
See God in anything your reflections in. I can find God in anything I'm reflecting in. You can see God in anything your reflections in. I can find God in anything I'm reflecting in.
My daddy said don't ever assume, ask questions. It's ironic it was that advice that helped this song happen. It was also that advice that led me to my life's blessings. That same advice helped me make it through life's lessons. It was that advice that separates grown-ups away from children. That advice can be the difference from knowing or just believing. It was that advice that brought the gavel down on my decision of breaking the mental chains of this man created religions. His faith and belief, nonsense, the biggest scam ever. I hate to say it, I swear this one hell of a mental illness. We don't believe no other time. Why we do it with these religions? The fact that COVID's killing while all of these guys is missing. A lot of hide and seek and peek the booze. Guys playing games with you. I'ma just assume he ain't got no COVID miracles. Maybe he ran out after making the donkey talk, or them stories about a guy walking on water tides. This is simply a distraction to keep you away from you and to look outside for a guy when the God is inside of you. When you close your eyes at night to pray to that voice you talking to. When you ready to face the truth, you realize that that voice is you.
You can see God in anything your reflections in. I can find God in anything I'm reflecting in. You can see God in anything your reflections in. I can find God in anything I'm reflecting in. You can see God in anything your reflections in. I can find God in anything I'm reflecting in. You can see God in anything your reflections in. I can find God in anything I'm reflecting in.